How you doing, guys? This is Eric from WWII.com. We've seen a lot of stuff recently with the conflict in Ukraine building up to further conflict beyond that. You know, a lot of us, including myself, are of the mind that this is definitely going to escalate, that there's certain parties that want this to escalate, and we're seeing a lot of weird stuff happen that pretty much guarantees this. And one particular thing that happened recently that has happened in the past and preceded the expansion of World War II by about 8 months. We've seen Ukraine actually stop gas shipments to Europe, or at least reduce them significantly, which is very interesting. You know, they've cited the Russians as being the cause of that, like, oh, we can't do it now. But Europe relies extremely heavily on Ukrainian and Russian natural gas. It's always viewed as the Russian being the one to use this potential weapon of shutting off the natural gas to Europe as, you know, something that they could do to hurt Europe. So to see Ukraine do it is interesting. Obviously, it certainly could be exactly as they say, that they just can't do it anymore and it's going to cause problems and they know it, but they just don't have a choice. Or, you know, it certainly could be viewed from the lens of there's parties that want this to escalate, that want to put all these other NATO countries in a tough spot where they have to act more dramatically, including Ukraine. You know, if they know that certain things happening are going to cause all these other countries to get more involved, well, we know they want them to get more involved. Why wouldn't certain elements in Ukraine or even in NATO want these things to happen as well? So, not saying that is what happens, but certainly it's a possibility when we know there's a lot of money and a lot of potential power grabs that can happen during military conflicts. There's always people who want them to happen. That's not a good thing for just the normal people of the world. But specifically, the thing that I'm referencing that preceded World War II by a few months was the Lend Lease Act. So if we're using that as an example, which Biden recently just reenacted, let me read the article here. It says, this is from voxtoday.net. Fake President Biden signs a bipartisan Lend Lease Act that historical precedent suggests is likely to precede a hot war with the Sino-Russian alliance within 1 year. And then to quote the Toronto Star, Washington sought to portray a united front against Russia's invasion of Ukraine Monday as President Joe Biden signed a bipartisan measure to reboot the World War II-era Lend-Lease program, which helped defeat Nazi Germany, to bolster Kiev and Eastern European allies. The signing comes as the U.S. Congress is poised to unleash billions more to fight the war against Russia, with Democrats preparing $40 billion in military and humanitarian aid, larger than the $33 billion package Biden has requested. So, as many people have pointed out on Twitter and elsewhere, there's so many things in this country that are in dire need of attention, including a current formula shortage on baby formula, all sorts of infrastructural decay, tons of homelessness, and including veterans specifically. The country is in massive, unprecedented amounts of debt. Why are we sending billions and billions of dollars to other countries overseas? It is unconscionable. And to continue the article, from Infogalactic, the Lend-Lease policy, formerly titled An Act to Promote the Defense of the United States, enacted March 11th, 1941, was an American program to defeat Germany, Japan, and Italy by distributing food, oil, and materiel between 1941 and August 1944. Less than 8 months later, the USA was formally at war with Japan and Germany. So obviously this is one of the, I mean, it's no longer even accurate to say that we're in a proxy war, because, I mean, a proxy war can't exist when everyone's admitting that you're helping one side, giving specific intel, weapons, you know what I mean? Like there has to be some level of plausible deniability and pretense for it to be a proxy war. We are actually at war with Russia right now, or NATO is. And I'm assuming, but you would have to do a lot to convince me that there aren't any NATO troops actually acting in Ukraine in any capacity. And we certainly are providing significant support, literal support, military support, intel support, monetary support to one side of the conflict. So we're in the conflict. And I think it'll go actually expand into hot conflict directly with NATO within 8 to 12 months based on this historical precedent. According to the U.S. Director of National Intelligence, Russia is now engaged in military conflict with Ukraine and the West. Quote, notably, while the EU and US have been rocked by soaring inflation and record gas prices, the White House has until now insisted that America will not experience food shortages. Haynes' statement marks the first time that a U.S. official acknowledged that this may be a reality. Haynes also referred to the situation in Ukraine as Russia's military conflict with Ukraine and the West. So they're already like putting that language in there to try to prepare people. An apparent acknowledgement of the U.S.'s role as a participant. Yeah. In the eyes of Russia Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, the U.S. is already essentially going to war with Russia through a proxy. Yeah, and it's barely through a proxy, like I just said, due to its sharing of arms and intelligence with Kiev. End quote. And then Vox goes on to say, the neocons finally get their war. It's not the war they ideally wanted, but when you're shopping with someone else's credit card, you have to buy whatever is available. It still works. Yeah. His estimate is basically based on the historical precedent, 8 to 12 months before we're at actual open war. Certainly could happen much sooner than that. In modern times, everything moves much quicker. But it might take a little longer than that, but it's almost certain to happen now. So very interesting. Obviously, that gives us I assume also, yes, this is going to happen. It's going to expand into an actual World War III. Doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be nukes flying or it's going to be all-out destruction, but just it's going to expand into open conflict with NATO, not just pretend conflict with NATO. And hopefully it does take 8 to 12 months. You know, it's I've read better than 1 month, so it gives us a lot more time to prepare, but you do need to prepare. And as always, what can you do to prepare? I mean, if you want to prepare for the possibility of nuclear engagements of some kind, then obviously the gas masks I mentioned in the description, the potassium iodide, moving to somewhere that's a lot more remote, building a shelter if that's feasible for you. I think the biggest thing you need to do to be prepared is financially and logistically with food and things like that. They mentioned that our government is now openly talking about food shortages being a possibility here in the U.S. We've known that for a long time. I've been preaching about that. I just did a video on how to get an entire month's worth of food supplies for $110. So there's no excuses. The stuff is still there. You still have a little bit of time, but you have to act now. I like to go a little bit further, make sure you've got your weapons, ammunition, your body armor, all that stuff. But it just comes down to basic preparedness. All the things that you would do when you don't know exactly what the conflict is going to be, most of those things are the same even when we do know what the conflict is potentially going to be. Just prepare for economic collapse or economic hardships at the very least, and look at to history, the things that happen when countries are at war. It's still extreme, even if we go to war, it's still extremely unlikely that we'll have to deal with direct invasion of some kind here in the U.S., thankfully, but we're going to have to deal with shortages, massive price hikes, potential civil unrest. Who knows? We could even see a draft come back. I think that's possible. I don't necessarily think it's probable, but it depends on how gnarly things get. Interesting times. Let me know what you guys think about this, and if the historical precedent will hold true or for some reason it won't in this case. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you guys later.